Hello, Starshine. My name is Liz, and this is my channel, Simsational Stories. If you have not seen my videos before and you enjoy this one, please like and subscribe. And maybe check out my Facebook page, where this whole thing began, as well. All relevant links are in the description below, and of course, if you're a Sims player and you'd like to download any of the characters featured in my stories, just search the hashtag Simsational Stories on the Sims 4 gallery. All original content is created by This Is Not Eric. Alrighty then. So, welcome. And what is up, Buttercup? Are you having a good day or a bad day? Whichever your answer, please allow me to distract you from your life and tell you a story, a Simsational story. Before I begin though, I'd like to issue this blanket content and trigger warning. The following story is just Sims, hey. I'm not going to apologise for treating them terribly, if that's what I've done. But I do want to assure you now that although I mean absolutely no harm, I completely understand if you feel unable to consume my content. Many loves, and we will catch each other on the internet elsewhere. Okay, so now we've gotten that over with, let's go. Today's story is from Kelly-Anne Kalthis & Co., and we're at chapter 9. If you have not seen previous chapters and would like to catch up, there are playlists available on my channel so you can hear the entire story in chronological order. The rest of us are going to move on from where we left off last time though. So without further ado. Kelly-Anne Kalthis wasn't into getting up in the mornings with her children. She had more important things to be doing, like sleeping off the hangover from the night before. She would sleep in so much that some mornings, and sometimes afternoons, long after her eldest daughter Kelsey had gone to school, the next eldest of her children, Kevin, would come in to try and wake their mother. Invariably, this would result in a lecture from Kelly-Anne. Kevin was almost 4 years old now, and he really should have no need to be coddled. He knew where the fridge was, and he was big enough to fetch himself or his brother or sister a juice if they wanted one. He should really have no need to wake Kelly-Anne unless there was an actual emergency. At his age, Kelsey had done all that and more. He should know better by now. Kelly-Anne would usually wake up around lunchtime though. Sometimes earlier, and rarely, every now and again, after a really big night. So late that Kelsey was already home from school. But whenever Kelly-Anne would wake up, she would make them all more than enough grilled cheese sandwiches so that if the kids got hungry again later, they could just snack on the leftovers cold. It wasn't like she actually neglected them or anything. They were getting fed. Kelly-Anne just loved grilled cheese sandwiches. They were her greatest weakness and pleasure, all rolled into one deliciously easy meal. And it was basically the only thing that the family ever ate. It came as no surprise to her that cheese affected the same part of the brain as many drugs do. She was practically addicted to them and could easily and happily talk about them all day. After Kelsey was home from school, Kelly-Anne would start to get ready to go out. She wasn't as confident in herself as she had been when she was younger. She knew she'd put on a bit of weight, having all the kids. But she still scrubbed up all right. The family would all have more grilled cheese sandwiches for dinner before Kelly-Anne left for the club, with Kelsey in charge of the evening's entertainment and getting her little brothers and sisters to bed. Kelsey was used to it all by now. It was her normal. She couldn't remember a time when her mum hadn't gone out at night and left them all home alone. At least she was old enough now, Kelsey was 11, almost 12, to look after them all properly. It had been harder when she was younger, but now it was easy. Only Kevin argued with her about bedtime, and she usually just let him have his head. He was a wild kid. After all the little kids were in bed, if she wasn't too tired, Kelsey would finally finish all her homework and write in her journal. She had kept a detailed journal since learning to write, before going to bed herself. She was a very responsible young lady, and she had big dreams of getting her and her siblings out of San Myshono someday. While Kelsey was at home with the young kids, Kelly-Anne was out having fun, or at least out trying to have some fun. Years ago, she'd been so beautiful, so confident, and so able to take home any man she wanted. Now, though, some men she didn't even try with anymore. She knew they were just way out of her league. But Kelly-Anne wasn't giving up. It was hard work being a single mother of 5 rambunctious, expensive children. Although she didn't have to pay rent anymore, an accidental bonus of having had a baby with her landlord, Kelly-Anne still had other bills to pay. With electricity, water, food, and taxes all taken into account, it amounted to approximately $1,250 a month. And Kelly-Anne's paycheck as a media intern only paid $16 an hour. It just wasn't enough. The stress of everything was always passed on to Kelsey. It was her who had to look after all the little kids, clean up the apartment, and refuse to answer the phone or door when bill collectors came calling. She struggled to keep up with a workload that was well beyond her years, and she didn't always succeed. But she never gave up. Kelsey was a quietly determined young girl who loved her little brothers and sisters with all her heart, and she would do anything for them. Kelsey worried constantly that she would be found out, that someone would realise how bad things were with her mother and report them to children's services. If that happened, they'd probably all be separated and put in different foster homes, or worse, adopted out. Kelsey knew that her mum wasn't the best parent in the world, but at least they were all together. And things got easier as they all got older. Kaylee was toddling now, and Kevin was big enough to really start helping out on chores too. Kelsey realised one day that it was the first time in her whole life that the family didn't have a baby, or one on the way, and she hoped it would stay like this. Her mother had a bad habit of picking the wrong guys, and Kelsey was sick of it. Kevin was also sick of it. He was growing up, and as he did, he was beginning to realise that their life wasn't normal. Other kids had parents that were home at night, that made their lunches before school, parents that cared. His whole life, his big sister Kelsey had always been the only one that ever cared about him like that. His mother didn't care about them, and he didn't care about her. Kevin really cared about the rest of his family though. They all did. Their love for one another was the one thing that kept the Kalthis children together. Kevin was a bit of an angry, resentful kid, but his soft side really came out when he was around his family. His bond with his little brother Keith was especially strong, as they were the only 2 boys, but he loved his little sisters as well, of course, and he worshipped Kelsey. Kelsey baked her own birthday cake when she turned 13. She wasn't even sure her mother had remembered her birthday, until she found a $20 note slipped onto her pillow the next day, obviously put there while she was asleep after Kelly-Anne had gotten home from the club. It was a big milestone for her though. She was finally a teenager. She would be able to get a part-time job soon, and it wouldn't be long until she could move out if she wanted. She wasn't sure if she could leave her little brothers and sisters, but it was an idea she was thinking about. It was around this time that Kelly-Anne Kalthis caught the eye of rough-around-the-edges minor criminal Kyle Harris. After leaving behind a bit of a bad scene back in Bridgeport, Kyle had just moved to Simsational, and this was his first night out on the town. When he saw Kelly-Anne on the dance floor at the Stargazer Lounge, he was captivated by her. He had always been attracted to fuller-figured women, and he thought Kelly-Anne was wonderful. Kyle also lived in the arts quarter of Simsational, in a building not far from Kelly-Anne's, with his Rottweiler Lola. They shared a spacious apartment with luxurious furnishings, all paid for with the proceeds of Kyle's nefarious doings. The last heist he had pulled off in Bridgeport had led to his and Lola's move, but it had also led to some significant financial gains, which he had used to purchase his new apartment. With his newfound wealth, Kyle was happy to buy all the drinks that first night at the club, and every other night after that, as he could easily afford it, and he wanted to impress Kelly-Anne. She was hot, with her violet eyes, silky black hair, luscious lips, and voluptuous curves. Kelly-Anne Kalthis had Kyle Harris totally smitten within hours. Kelly-Anne wasn't exactly immune to Kyle's charms either. It had been a really long time since she'd felt like this. Kyle looked at her like she was beautiful. And she was beautiful. He made her believe that again, because he wasn't lying to her when he said that. His desire for her was real, and she could see it in his eyes. She went home with him that night. It was a magical evening for them both. Kyle had never been so impressed. This woman! Her body was incredible enough, but the things she did with it, the way she moved, touched him, tasted him, and made his body react, it was indescribable. At one point, she had him almost crying with release. Could this finally be the one he'd been waiting for? He hoped so. And Kelly-Anne? She was in a dream. This couldn't be real, could it? And that brings us to the end of Chapter 9 of Kelly-Anne Kalthis & Co. If you've enjoyed this video, don't forget to like and subscribe so you can tune in soon to hear the next chapter. Or like I said, look us up on Facebook. Bye!